Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we're going to talk about four surprising, maybe unexpected stats, things that have happened so far during the Wolves season. Compare last year to this year in terms of things we just weren't expecting to happen as the Wolves sit here at 40 and 30, 12 games to play. We'll also talk about Wolves Pelicans tonight. We'll preview that game for you. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day. Happy Timberwolves game day. The Wolves take on the Pelicans tonight. Game one of two in the next 3 nights. Both games at Target Center against the lowly New Orleans Pelicans. Of course, we've seen several times this year, but most recently Monday against a shorthanded Pacers team that the Wolves cannot take any opponents lightly. We'll talk about that matchup later in the show. Plenty to get to there. First, though, I want to touch on, I think, probably 4 things that are a bit unexpected about this season. And we did something similar a couple weeks ago. That was more specific to like bigger picture surprises. This is more like in the weeds. This statistic is a surprise because it is a career high, and here's why that's extra surprising, right? That's what we're going to do today. We'll talk a little Ant. We'll talk a little Jaden. We'll talk probably a little Donte DiVincenzo, although I think he's kind of leveled off to maybe what we'd expect in a lot of areas, but then also some Jaylen Clark conversation as well. So plenty to get to here on the show today. First, though, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And a reminder, you can subscribe to the daily Locked On Wolves newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It's one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. All right. Unexpected stats from the Timberwolves season so far. Let's start with Anthony Edwards. And with Ant, I wouldn't say that this particular trend is necessarily unexpected or surprising per se, because I think we kind of saw a trend headed this direction. But I think it's the how drastic it is that's a little jarring. And what I'm referring to is the shot distribution, the average distance on his shot, the frankly plummeting of the percentage of his shots that he's taking within 3 feet of the rim. It's not a positive thing. In fact, I think the other 3 of these things are probably all positive things. This isn't necessarily positive. Now, I want to preface all of it by saying I'm not a get off your lawn that I can't believe this guy's shooting nearly 50% of his shots from 3 guy, because the dude's shooting still 40%, even though he was 1 of 11 against the Pacers from deep on Monday. He's still 40% from 3, attempting more than 10 per game. The volume and accuracy combination, and the fact that he can shoot it off the dribble better than or as good as anybody this side of Steph Curry. I mean, like, I'm not at all saying he's as good of a shooter as Steph Curry, but like off the dribble, there are not guys shooting the basketball like Anthony Edwards off the dribble. He has basically unlimited range. He's not afraid to shoot. You know, he's got like 8 or 10 heaves on the season. Like, he's not a field goal percentage saver, right? He's putting the basketball up, trying to score. And I'm not at all saying get off my lawn. What I am saying is that the increase in 3-point percentage, 3-point attempt rate, 3-point attempts have come at the cost of lack of attempts at the rim. And that's where there's a bit of an issue. Yeah, he's also shooting the ball less in the mid-range, but the drop-off is more drastic inside 3 feet, which is a bigger deal because obviously it's a closer shot, so it's always more efficient. It also means there's a lot of dunks and layups there, of course. And then also you're more likely to get fouled within 3 feet of the basket than you are from 16, 18, 20 feet, right? So for his career, a little over a quarter of Anthony Edwards' shot attempts have come at the rim or within 3 feet, according to Basketball Reference, 25.5%. This season, it's 17.2%, 8.3 points below his career average. Now, that includes a rookie season where nearly a third of his shots were coming at the rim, 30.6%. His second season, 28%. His third season, so his first All-Star season just 2 years ago, 29.5% of his shots were coming within 3 feet of the rim. So still nearly a third of his shots. That's 12.3% more shots at the rim 2 years ago than what we saw this year. Last year was squarely in the middle, 22.8%, which was a career low to that point. And now it has absolutely plummeted. Layer in between 3 and 10 feet, he's also shooting 3% less from there. So like within 10 feet, I mean, if you want to combine those numbers, within 10 feet of the basket, I'm doing this math now on the fly because I didn't combine the two ahead of time. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to do that math because I'm going to mess it up. But we're talking, well, actually, no, I could do it more quickly. We're talking, if you look at, let's do it this way. From 2 years ago, Anthony Edwards was shooting basically 45% of his shots were coming from within 10 feet. This season, that number is 33.2%. So basically, I don't know, around 10% less shots from within 10 feet of the rim and 12% less shots from within 3 feet of the rim. That's not great. We've seen the free throw rate decrease as well, although it's picked up here recently. I mean, he attempted 20 free throws the other night, but the free throw rate has decreased. But not as drastically because lately it's improved quite a bit. He's getting a lot more calls. And overall this season compared to what it was 2 years ago, there's no question if like he's not doing anything different tactically. He isn't. In fact, I mean, remember, he's leading the league in technical fouls. He's already been suspended a game. He's still yelling, "Hey, ref," anytime someone touches him. And he still doesn't flop. Like he's not all of a sudden James Harden or SGA. Like he's still trying to play through guys. And guys bounce off him, and he's still not getting calls that he should, but he's finally getting some calls. So just think if he increased the number of attempts at the rim, and I understand that takes a toll on his body. I get it. But here's hoping that's a switch he can flip in the playoffs to be more aggressive getting downhill going to the rim because he's still a 40% three-point shooter. I'm not at all advocating that he shoots less threes necessarily. I just think he should shoot more at the rim. And obviously the way he's being defended impacts that. I recognize that. I recognize that when they're putting two on the ball all the time, it's a lot easier when you get a little bit of space to launch a three than it is to take more contact and get into the paint and try and score that way. I understand that. But just think how dangerous or how efficient he would be if those rim attempts hadn't dropped so drastically. And this is well documented, but now his overall shot, split is that 49.3% of his shots. Basically, half his shots are coming from outside the arc. That's a little over 10 attempts per game, and he's still shooting 40% from outside the arc. I should point out his percentage within 3 feet is also down. It's not a career low, but it's lower than it was each last two seasons, 66%. Not drastically, 4.5%, I guess, lower than last year. He's a little better, actually, between 3 and 10 feet. Not that that's a huge slice of shots for him, but he has gotten a little bit better in that short mid-range game and just really is shooting a negligible amount of shots between 10 feet and the three-point line, which is a positive thing. But that could even be lower. I'm not saying he should shoot the ball less than 10 times a game from outside the arc. I just think that it could be tweaked a little bit. All right. I've got three slightly quicker hitters, if you will, for my next three kind of unexpected stats, and then we'll close the show by talking Wolves Pelicans, get you ready for tonight's matchup against New Orleans. It's all coming up here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Prize Picks. Basketball season is nearly over at the NBA, and of course there's a big college tournament going on this week. There's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you just pick more or less on at least two player projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's super easy to use, available in over 30 states, and lets you mix and match projections across different sports. Like, for instance, say tonight, Timberwolves game, you're going to select Anthony Edwards for more than 25 points, and maybe you're going to pick, I don't know, Rudy Gobert for more than 10 rebounds. Prize Picks makes it easy to do exactly that. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds. You can stay engaged all game long. And when you win, you get a fast payout. Your money hits your account in as little as 15 minutes with no waiting around. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends at Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, many of us have had an ongoing problem. We just don't have time between work, life, trying to eat healthier. And like the podcast, like especially now this time of year, it's easy to feel stressed out. Like you're just too busy. You go to the grocery store, buy things you don't need, and then you end up with no time to actually cook. It makes it really hard to stick to health goals or financial goals for that matter. But everything can change by discovering Hungry Root. It can be an absolute game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and a nutritionist all in one. They take care of your grocery shopping, recommending meals and groceries based on your taste and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options. And the best part is every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to your door. It's a huge time saver and can make healthy eating so much simpler. You're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. All right, 3 more surprises for you. Jaden McDaniels is the other one I'm excited to talk about. I talked a lot about Jaden recently, and I think it's justified. He's made a true leap. Like, he's the only guy on the roster that's made a genuine leap from what he was as an NBA player, which was a good NBA player, a great defender, to like a legit starter on a really good playoff team type player. I mean, there's one stat I want to key in on the most, but across the board, this dude has seen improvement, and we might as well touch on all of it, even though I hit it a week ago. It just continues for Jaden. It's just incredible. The one I want to key in on is offensive rebounding. His offensive rebound rate is up 2.5 percentage points, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot when, like, as a rookie, his offensive rebound rate was 3.6%, and actually last year was 3.2%. So lowest in his career. This year, that's up 2.5 percentage points. If you look at the Wolves as a team, Jaden McDaniels is only behind. I'm not including Tristan Newton. I'm not including Leonard Miller. We can include Luka Garza if you want, but he's only behind the bigs. Garza, Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle, and then Jaylen Clark, who also has an incredible offensive. Actually, I was going to mention his too. And then Jaden McDaniels, better offensive rebound rate than Naz Reid, better than Josh Minott when he sees the floor, better than an activity guy like TJ Shannon, better than some of the guards who get in there and rebound. Because remember, it's rate, it's not volume. Right. So it's percentage of available rebounds when you're on the floor. So that 5.7% number is really impressive for Jaden. And I heard I'll hat tip to Jim Pete from the Wolves broadcast for pointing this out. I think it was him and not Grady. Well, anyway, they had the conversation that just volume wise, Jaden McDaniels already has more than twice as many rebounds, offensive rebounds, this season than he did all of last year. All of last season, he played in 72 games and he had 56 offensive rebounds. This season, he already has 116 offensive rebounds. He's more than half the offensive rebounds in 2 less games played. I guess he's played a little over 100 more minutes because he hasn't been as much foul trouble. But that's an incredible stat. So both volume-wise, because of the opportunity and his activity level, because of the opportunity, and then the activity level is reflected in the actual rate-based stat, which is super impressive. And it has allowed him so many more scoring opportunities. And I know he's playing a little bit more at the 4 this year because of injuries and stuff. Like, he's had more opportunities closer to the basket. But it's more about, again, the defensive rebound rate is up a lot too, but it's the offensive rebound rate that's so impressive to me. And yeah, he's attempting more shots at the rim than he did last year. He's also putting the ball on the floor a little bit more. But I think it's just as much because of the offensive rebound rate as it is for any other reason. Very impressive. And I always, whenever I talk about this, forgive me if you've heard me say this, but I always roll it back to what he did last year in the playoffs when the Wolves said, hey, look, Phoenix doesn't rebound well. They don't defensive rebound well. They don't do a good job guarding guys or boxing guys out in the corners. Why don't you just corner crash against this team? And sure enough, Jaden did, to the tune of like 3.5 or something offensive rebounds per game in that 4-game sweep over Phoenix. Just nuts. And that has carried into this season for Jaden McDaniels. And if we want to talk across the board, like the defensive rebound rate is actually up, also career high, up over 6 points over last year. So his total rebound rate is up over 4 points over a career low last season. Assist rate's a career high, steal rate's a career high, turnover rate is a career best, career low, usage rate a career high. Across the board, just a very impressive season for Jaden McDaniels, who, by the way, I know he got his contract, but he's only 24 and a half years old. Dude doesn't turn 25 until basically the start of training camp next year. So there's still growth here to be had for Jaden McDaniels. And I am so impressed with everything he's done this season. And more specifically, this I guess, shorter run since January 1st has been ultra impressive. Jaylen Clark is the next one I want to hit. The most impressive stat for me, and I understand the caveat of very limited sample size, so I'll just get in front of that now and say I get it. I mean, Jaylen Clark's only attempted, I'm going to get the actual number here. Jaylen Clark has only attempted 92 shots as an NBA player, only 42 threes. So small sample size caveat absolutely applies. Doesn't mean I'm not impressed with this guy and the way he's shooting the basketball. As a college player at UCLA, he played 90 games over 3 years, and he shot 30.2% on threes. 32.9 as a senior or junior his last year, but 30.2% over 3 years at UCLA. This season, he's 40.5% on limited volume at the NBA level. And the stat I really want to key in on is the corner three-point shooting, because that's where Jaylen Clark gets the majority of his three-point opportunities, is from the corners. And Jaylen Clark is attempting, 62% of his three-point attempts are coming from the corner, so nearly 2/3, and he's shooting 42.3%. The only Wolves with a better corner three-point percentage are Rob Dillingham on similarly low volume, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who just lives and breathes corner threes, which actually only a third of his three-pointers come from the corners, but he's 49%. And then Mike Conley, just over a quarter of his three-point attempts come from the corners. He's 47.1% from three in the corners. Jaylen Clark, 62%, we'll call it, of his three-point attempts come from the corners. 42.3%, third on the team in percentage if you take out Dillingham. That's I would say even a shocking number. I mean, I've read my scouting report from him when he was drafted a couple of years ago, and I said that I like this dude. He has good touch, but like he's not a good free throw shooter. I don't think he's going to be a good shooter at the NBA level. I just didn't think there was a whole lot of hope for it. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but he's 30% on three as a college player, 66% at the free throw line. Doesn't typically translate when he misses an entire year. Doesn't play for over a calendar year in any game situation because of the Achilles tear. And now all of a sudden he's a shooter. He's 40+% from three, 43% from the corners. Is it sustainable? Who knows? The sample size, the opportunity is small enough that we don't know. But it's nonetheless surprising, completely unexpected, and frankly, what has allowed him to stay on the floor. Like, I know the defense is great, but he was supposed to be such a bad offensive player that it was going to be a non-starter to have him in the rotation this year. And here he is on the fringes of the rotation, making huge plays like he did to help give the Wolves the lead after trailing by double digits in the second half against the Pacers on Monday. And of course, he didn't play down the stretch, which is, a conversation we could have another time. But like, I don't know how he doesn't get even more minutes than he's already getting. So that was a surprising number for me. The last one, this is maybe the least surprising, so I did save it for last. Donte DiVincenzo, a lot of what he's done this year has evened out. The one thing that stands out as an outlier for his career is his assist rate. And a lot of that is because he's initiated offense off the bench. He's been kind of a de facto backup point guard at times. But he's got an assist rate of 20.8%, nearly 21%. His previous career high for a full season was 17%, 2 years ago with Golden State. I mean, like, that's a significant difference. Like, basically 4 points higher than his previous career high for a season. And yet he still maintained the second highest usage rate of his career next to last year in New York. So it's his highest assist rate and second highest usage rate. The ball's been in his hands a ton. And part of that is the maturation process of him as a pro, and opportunity's been there. But I'm just very impressed with the increase in assist rate and the turnover rate. By the way, it's worse than last year with the Knicks because, again, he just shot the ball a bunch. But it's actually his lowest turnover rate he's had since his last full year in Milwaukee, which was the 2020-2021 season. The second COVID-shortened season was the last time he had a turnover rate as low as it is right now. So a lot of those numbers are trending in the right direction. I know he started the year shooting the ball terribly from outside the arc. That's shifted quite a bit. A couple of bad plus minus performances here notwithstanding recently. Positives in terms of best assist rate, second lowest turnover rate in the last 5 years for him, second highest usage rate ever for him. All those numbers trend in the right direction. I actually think defensively he's been really good lately. They've been challenging him with some more difficult assignments. I think he's held up well. But to me, it's the assist rate and the ability for him to also initiate offense when he's not seen as a point guard. He's played, probably close to 2/3 of his minutes as a de facto point guard. Although next to Anthony Edwards, we could argue about, is Ant really the point guard in these lineups? Probably, yeah. But I think it's interesting to see that number go in that direction for Donte at this stage in his career. And in his first year in Minnesota. All right, let's talk Wolves Pelicans. We'll do that next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is sponsored by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 per month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, let's talk Wolves Pelicans. So, obviously, the Pelicans, one of the worst teams in the NBA. They've also had a ton of injury issues. All that to say, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, both should play against the Timberwolves on Wednesday night, barring something unforeseen. Zion was questionable before the Pelicans game on Monday against Detroit with due to personal reasons. Ended up playing, and the Pelicans lost by like 20. Actually, no, they lost by worse than that. How much did they lose by? A lot of points. They lost by not 20, 46 on Monday against the Pistons. There's a bunch of dudes that are just out for New Orleans. Unfortunately, since the Wolves last saw the Pelicans first week of January, DeJounte Murray tore his Achilles in late January, out for the season. Of course, Herbert Jones is out for the season. Herb Jones, Brandon Boston Jr., who played well against the Wolves, broke his ankle or had a stress reaction in his ankle. He's out. A lot of guys banged up, or a lot of guys just straight out of the lineup for the Pelicans. And last time out, the Pelicans lost to Detroit, and I lost the box score, but CJ McCollum shot like 1 of 12 or 1 of 15. When the Wolves played the Pelicans in early January, CJ McCollum did the same thing. He shot 1 of 14 against the Wolves in that game, was a minus 15 in a game. The Wolves only won by 7, 1 of 7 on threes. DeJounte Murray was the best player on the floor for New Orleans. He had 29 points, 6 assists, and 6 steals in that game. Again, out for the season. Brandon Boston played 25 minutes off the bench, out for the season. Herb Jones, great defender, was very good in that game, out for the season. Zion Williamson did put up 22, 6, and 4 in that one. And of course, he is still playing. But this is a Pelicans team that is depleted. The Timberwolves should have no problem. Now, a depleted Pacers team versus a depleted Pelicans team, if we want to compare those, we can certainly argue that the depleted Pelicans team is less scary. However, Zion's the best player in the conversation, right? If we're talking Pelicans, Pacers, like there's no question that with, Siakam and some of those guys not available for the Pacers the other night. I mean, the Wolves right now are minus 13. They're 13-point favorites over the Pelicans over at FanDuel right now. And remember, the Wolves also play the Pelicans on Friday. The Wolves don't have anybody on their injury report finally. And on top of all that, it's just not that bad of a matchup, even if the Pelicans were healthy. So like some of these season numbers are a little bit weird because it's not the same team that it was earlier this season. But the Pelicans are a team that doesn't force a lot of turnovers themselves defensively. They're a bad defensive rebounding team. So that helps Minnesota, who turns it over a lot and has been an offensive rebounding team for the last 8, 10, 12 weeks. They've done a bunch of it. So that's not bad for Minnesota. New Orleans also gives up the second worst or second best, I guess. So they have the second worst defensive effective field goal percentage in the league. They'll let you shoot open threes. They'll let you make open threes. They also don't make very many threes themselves. They're 26th in three-point rate on the offensive end and 26th in three-point percentage, 34.6%. You look at all the individuals on their team. CJ McCollum's the best, and he's shooting 37.6%, which is basically league average. Same with Jose Alvarado. Of course, Brandon Ingram's not there anymore. There's just not a whole lot there to be worried about. Like the only other guys that are above league average, or near league average, Brandon Boston, who's out, was 35%. Like nobody else strikes fear in you in terms of 3-point shooting. I say that. I realize Obi Toppin, who's 33%, went 7 for 10, including the game winner against the Wolves on Monday. But law of averages, right? Math should even out at some point, maybe, even though the Wolves are 4 games worse than their Pythagorean win-loss record because they've had such bad luck in close games. I don't know. The one thing that worries me a little, the Pelicans are a good offensive rebounding team. They're 9th in the league in offensive rebound rate. And of course, Zion Williamson is all over that. They've also got, who's the big, Misi. Is Misi? I think you say it Misi. He is also a good offensive rebounding big that you have to deal with. Yves Misi. I was right. I was nervous for a second that I was going to say it wrong. Misi, you got to look out for him. You got to look out for Williamson. Like that would be the one thing that makes me a little bit nervous is that New Orleans could all of a sudden just decide that they're going to crash the glass like crazy and be effective in that way. But overall, they've lost 7 out of 8. Outside of Zion and McCollum, if McCollum gets it together, and like Amisi being active on the glass, like you don't worry too much about what this team's going to do to you offensively. You'd think they would have a better offensive team this year. They don't. They're actually, according to Cleaning the Glass, they're 26th in offense. They're actually dead last in defense, according to Cleaning the Glass. I already talked about their issues rebounding the basketball, their effective field goal percentages of defense, not good stuff. And then offensively, it really is just offensive rebound rate, and they take care of the basketball. Those are the only things that they do particularly well. And again, that makes it not a terrible matchup for Minnesota. They're kind of middle of the pack in pace. Many teams still try and run against the Wolves if they have the opportunity, even teams that don't typically play at a fast pace. So I would look out for that. But this is obviously a matchup that the Wolves should do well with. And they get them again on Friday. It's tough to beat a team twice. Tough to beat a team twice in 48-ish hours in the same building, even though the Wolves lost twice to Portland early in the season. But these are two, sound silly, but really must-win type games for Minnesota. They really are. I should note, surely you've seen this, but the Warriors lost to a very shorthanded Denver team on Monday. At the same time, the Wolves were losing to the Pacers. So while it was an opportunity loss for the Wolves, it also was, they needed to be grateful that happened. As I record this, the Warriors are playing the second night of a back-to-back. They're actually up 14 at halftime against Milwaukee, and the Clippers are trailing to Cleveland. Of course, the Clippers are right behind Minnesota in the West. Clippers are down 6 late in the second quarter right now against Cleveland. So hopefully the Golden State game flips and Cleveland stays up on the Clippers. But we are scoreboard watching. That's the time of year we're in. All right. That's all I got for you today. Of course, we'll be back on Thursday with the post-game pod following Wednesday night's Wolves-Pelicans matchup. Of course, the live postcast will be over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. Go check that out with Jack and Luke. And then that audio will be right here on this audio feed as well. Late Wednesday, I'll be back early Thursday with the post-game pod. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that you can also subscribe to the Locked On Wolves daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. One-stop shop for all things Wolves delivered right to your inbox every day, Monday through Friday. Sign up at lockedondaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.